Hello, this is Mark from I'm Organic Gardening, located in Zone 6B in the state of New Jersey. And I have a lot of information and updates to share with you today. And today we get to plant up these beautiful tomato plants in the garden using the C.P.R method, which means the C stands for compost or covers, the P stands for plant a living plant root in the ground all the time, and the R stands for rejuvenate and regenerate the soil. And some of those tomato plants are going to be going into our first test area, which will use seeds only of New Zealand white clover, winter rye in the background, and also sugar snap peas along the trellis. And this is what the seeds look like before we planted them up. This is the New Zealand white clover, our winter rye seeds, and our sugar snap peas. This is what the area looked like when we first planted our seeds up. And this is about 5 feet deep and then 50 feet long. And we're also going to be planting them in our test area number 2, which we planted up perennial root systems of strawberries, comfrey, we have some daylilies in there, and some lavender. And also our sugar snap peas along the trellis. And our comfrey that we divided up into smaller plants is doing amazingly well and has recovered very nicely, even just cutting up all those big comfrey plants. And is also flowering now and supporting our bees, and our habitat for our beneficial insects already in our garden. And those comfrey transplants that I divided up came out of my main Back to Eden garden, which we have 3 comfrey plants growing here, which I've just planted a single root in the ground about 3 years ago this fall, and these plants have been undisturbed and they're magnificent. As promised earlier, I want to give you an update in our first test area of our winter rye and also our New Zealand white clover, which is in front of us. First, we'll go over the New Zealand white clover. Our spring has been extremely terrible. We've had days for 2 or 3 days in 90 degrees, and then it will turn around and get only to 60 degrees Fahrenheit the next couple days and back up to 90. And what that does, that increases your chance of weeds, and I mean weeds, things that we don't want in our garden. Now, due to that crazy weather, we have something here that is strictly what we call a weed, something that is totally undesirable in our garden, and it's non-edible. So how do we remove it without causing too much interference to the soil around it that will actually bring up more weed seeds and grow inside this New Zealand white clover? And I will show you how. So what I'm going to do is use this dandelion weed puller, and it's basically just this is stainless steel, and they flattened the end or crimped it, and then they put a V-shaped notch on it to cut the root, and it has a nice handle on it. I got it on Amazon for about a little less than $20, and it's a very good quality tool, by the way. I bought it, so I'm not endorsing it, or I'm being a paid sponsor, but it works fairly well with perennial weed roots. And this unwanted plant is actually a decent sized root in the ground. And to remove it, you just have to go about 1 inch below the surface and then take the notch of this and just cut into it and then pop it out. Now you can go further down, but the best thing is that you're not disturbing that much soil. So let me show you how it's done. Now you can grab the top and go to the top and down, it's hard, and just cut around the base of the plant. And you'll find the roots, and you'll know by cutting it off what's going on. And there we go. Now, you can see here how I chopped off that perennial root right here, right in the ground, and it won't grow back because I took off the main top of the plant here, which is like so, up here. Now, as long as you remove this part and about 1 inch down, there's a very good chance that this won't grow back ever. And then in the meantime, you haven't disturbed the soil at all, and those clover roots will definitely move into that area and close up that little gap in the ground. And you can see there's just very little disturbance in that area. So I want to share this with you. This is what New Zealand white clover looks like when it's more mature. Now the other one we just planted again, like 60 days old. Now I planted these seeds last year, and this year it's flowering very nicely, and the other ones will too. And it has established itself very nicely to create this, let's say, nice little border here with multiple flowers that is also feeding my bee population. And I'll get a closer picture here. There's probably about 5 bumblebees in here and working their way around, getting fed already on these flowers, and it's doing extremely well. This is what New Zealand white clover will look like again when it matures. The other bed that I showed you is just very young and still growing, but this is what it will turn into in the future. And I just use this as the edge of my beds here to keep everything just locked and tight. So here we have a plant that actually is good. This is called lamb's quarter, fully edible. I'll leave that in there and throw it in my salad one day. But around the outer edges of here is something here. We'll take this one out. This one we see here is called lady's fingers. Again, no desire or helpful to us in the garden, so we'll remove this. And I'll simply just come here and just kind of shear off the top of these lady fingers, and that will control them too until the clover can take over. Now here's a good example of how nature works well together and doesn't actually compete or push things aside. In the background here we have our sugar snap peas, and some of them are starting to flower. And we have our New Zealand white clover in the bottom tier here. Now you can see that the sugar snap peas grew. They grew at the same rate as the New Zealand white clover, and they just grow a little bit taller, so there's no crowding or we'll push them out. Things work well with nature. We just have to find the ones that work well together and help each other so we can have a bountiful harvest all the time in our garden. And sugar snap peas make a gorgeous flower also too. I want to show you something I discovered this year and I never knew myself, and maybe you knew all the time in the past. Now what we have here is a sugar snap pea shoot. Now you can see that I broke the top off right here because let's say the top 5 or 6 inches is edible and I put it in my salad all the time, and I was looking for greens. But I never knew this before, and I guess I didn't pay attention to it, is that it's regrowing here, a brand new stem off to the side here of that sugar snap pea. And here we are at the end of the bed, and this is the winter rye that's growing. Now when you plant winter rye in the springtime, it doesn't grow as tall, and it pretty much acts like a grass as a cover crop over the area. Now again, all these cover crops you can plant in the springtime to help suppress weeds, grow and build soil, and actually help feed your other plants that you're planting in there, like our tomato plants. Cover crops are not strictly used in the wintertime, they're used all year round. So let's plant up our first tomato plant here in our test area, and now we just have to separate some of those sugar snap peas along the trellis so I can plant it up, and we're going to do that now. So we're going to move some of this out of the way here, just gently pulling them apart like so. So we get down to the soil, separate them out. There we go. And now we're going to take the pot off the tomato plant here and just use this as a guide. We're going to place that down in the ground. Let's see if we can move you closer here, like so. Now we have the pot in there. Now we're just going to take our shovel and just dig a hole around that pot, and to about the same size, and just plant that tomato plant in the ground. Now here we have our soil. So here's the area that I removed with a shovel that's about the same size as the pot. Now you can see here that I wish you could feel this, is that it's nice and airy because of all this roots that have been growing in here, meaning the sugar snap peas and the white clover. It just pulls apart so very nicely. And you can see that it's just awesome. The tilling was all done by the roots. Now, is this root here? Oh, it is. Look at this. This root here is a root of the sugar snap pea that was in there. Now what you can see on here, all those little white bumps, I'll let it just zoom in here, all those little white bumps here, like this one, and so, are nodules. That is, the rhizobium bacteria has infected the root and caused these nodules to help make nitrogen. That will pass along to the plant, the tomato plant, through mycorrhizal fungi. Now, a lot of people think that you grow this and it will add, like I say, 100 pounds per acre. It only does that now if you terminate it, which I'm doing now. I cut the top off here, like so, and then if I put this back in the ground, this will release nitrogen. If you let your sugar snap peas or any legume flower too long and actually go to seed, all the nitrogen that's in here will go back into the sugar snap peas itself to make proteins. It does not stay in the ground, so you cannot let the, let's say, legumes flower. If they do, they've used up all the nitrogen in the roots and they don't share it to the ground. You have to terminate it ahead of time. And if you want to, I will bring this inside and see if I can get a close-up. I will cut one of these nodules open, and you can tell if it still has nitrogen in there, because it almost looks like the color of blood. It's actually a dark burgundy to red, and if you're squeamish, don't look later on at the end of the video, but I will cut this open and see if I can get a closer shot of it for you inside. Now, before planting this, I always take my thumb and just kind of go along the edge here. Some people take a knife, and I'll do this in 4 spots around here. I'm just actually ripping the roots apart a little bit so they're not root bound. And it's not going to hurt the plant or anything else either. Now, so you can actually just pull the strings apart here. Now you can see it's not root bound, and we'll just take a little off the bottom like so, and now we'll just place it in the hole. You can always take your bottom leaves off of your tomato plants, like the last, let's say, couple of inches on the bottom here, like so. So you have a nice strong stem. And you can always plant it deeper than what's in the pot. So I go about another, say, 2 to 3 inches on top that I will plant it down deeper. And all this area here, from here down, will create roots very easily in the next month. Now we have the tomato plant placed nicely in the hole that we dug. Now we just have to backfill. Now, your first year doing this, I would recommend adding some worm castings to that area so you have a good productive garden. And in future years to come, your mycorrhizal fungi will spread in the soil. That's what all the clover is doing, and the sugar snap peas, and also creating that rhizobium bacteria for nitrogen for you. But also to be on the safe side, add some worm castings, and you don't have to worry about anything. And you can plant your tomatoes deep and then stake them to the trellis, and everything is said and done. And again, always water after your plants are put in there. And if you can, plant your plants in the evening, especially your tomato plants, so they're not stressed out. So around, say, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, go out and start planting your tomato plants up and have a great time in the evening. So I'm going to cut one of these root nodules open. I'll show you inside. They're not very big, and hopefully you can see that. So here's the root nodule, and I'm magnifying it for you, and hopefully that you can see the color between the end of the tweezers. It's kind of like a light burgundy in there, and that means there's nitrogen still available, so they're still good to go. Now, I'm glad I came in from outside. It's starting to rain very nicely. We have a huge storm coming in. Here's a better picture I found over the internet. Now, what you can see here, this is the rhizobium bacteria inside these nodules I was trying to show you on the sugar snap pea. Once it loses this color inside here and turns pale white, you can kind of see back here that it's losing color. That means all the nitrogen has been removed out of that nodule, so you don't have any more nitrogen. And it doesn't just go in the ground, it goes back up into the plant itself, into the seeds of beans. If it's clover, it goes into the foliage, like alfalfa. That's why alfalfa is high in protein for animals, and also that's why the nitrogen here goes back into the plant and creates protein, like I said, in that alfalfa, so animals can use it to get protein for their own use. I will give you more information on the other part of the C.P.R. method using the roots, like the comfrey and the strawberry plants. It's just that our weather is just not cooperating with me. It's way too windy even to record. I'm struggling with it all the time. So as soon as I can, I will get back out here, and please bear with me.